Hello everybody. Today we have come back again to read yet another kingdom from the biological classification, that is kingdom Protista. Now this kingdom Protista is a heterogeneous group. Heterogeneous group in the sense it contains the members which show a diversity, a range of diversity in them in terms of their cell composition, in terms of their mode of nutrition, in terms of their locomotory organs, almost everything. So that's why sometimes this is known as the dustbin kingdom. But this kingdom Protista was made, separate from that of the other organisms of the living world by the scientists, in the sense that it contains the unicellular organisms which are eukaryotic. Some were of the opinion that we cannot call these organisms belonging to kingdom Protista to be truly eukaryotic. The reason is because although they had a nucleus which was surrounded by that of the nuclear membrane, but the division, if you talk about, they did not show the normal process of the unicellular organism undergoing the process of mitosis. They rather showed the process of amitosis. So amitosis is a primitive character, whereas having the nuclear membrane was an advanced character. Likewise, the ribosomes which were found in case of these organisms resemble that of the eukaryotic organisms. The cell organelles which were found in these organisms, they were membrane bound organelles. So it was an intermediate characteristic between that of the prokaryotes and that of the eukaryotes. So some term them or some name them as these are the mesokaryotic organisms. But we are not going for that. We are going according to our book, and according to our book, it is a eukaryotic organism, as because it has a nucleus which is surrounded by a nuclear membrane. These are unicellular. These are eukaryotic organisms. These are colonial. They are generally solitary or they are colonial, but there is no tissue level organization in the body of the organism. This is a very simplified type of organization which are found. It's a cellular assemblage or aggregate which we can say, which sometimes forms the colony. But there is no tissue level differentiation of the body of these organisms. So let us at first see the characteristic features of these organisms. As just now I have said, these are single-celled organisms. These are eukaryotic organisms, that means which has a nucleus bounded by the nuclear membrane and which do not form tissues. They do not form any tissue level organization. So the body is very simplified. They have a nuclear membrane and mitochondria. Not only mitochondria, they have well developed other organelles also. Like I told you, they have ribosomes. They have even chloroplast also. Some members of the organisms belonging to this Protista, they have a chlorophyll, they have chloroplast in which they have the chlorophyll, and as a result they can do the photosynthetic mode of nutrition. Most of them can show different types of mode of nutrition. We will go for that, but yes, they have the membrane bound organelles inside them. Some have the plastids and some have the flagella. Now remember, in case of monerans also they had flagella, but that was a very simplified flagella and there was no particular arrangement, a specific arrangement. Flagella of course is made up of the protein which is called flagellin, but in case of the organisms belonging to Protista, they show a particular kind of arrangement in their flagella, that is the 9+2 arrangement. This 9+2 arrangement of flagella is a characteristic of the eukaryotic organisms. So peripheral there were 9 proteins, and the central there were 2 proteins. So this arrangement of the flagella is a characteristic features found in case of your kingdom Protista. Mode of nutrition, as I told you, some of them have chlorophyll in them. Mostly all the organisms belonging to this kingdom Protista have chlorophyll A in common, but besides chlorophyll A, they can have chlorophyll B, as we see in case of your Euglena, which is an organism which shows animal-like behavior as well as plant-like behavior. They have, along with chlorophyll A, they have chlorophyll B also. Some of the organisms, they have, along with chlorophyll A, they have chlorophyll C, and they have some other pigments like fucoxanthin. Okay, they have pigments like xanthophyll. So they have the other kind of accessory pigments which help in the process of photosynthesis. They are heterotrophic. They show a saprophytic mode of nutrition. Some of them are parasitic. Some of them are predators, and some of them even show holozoic form of nutrition. So a wide range of form of nutrition is found in case of the organisms belonging to the kingdom Protista. Next is they reproduce both sexually and asexually. Okay, so they are finally grouped into 5 groups. Now what are these groups? Let us see one by one. The first group, which has been mentioned in your book, are known as your chrysophytes. Now chrysophytes are known as also golden algae, or they are also known as your desmids. Okay, so chrysophytes, golden algae or desmids, what is the characteristic feature of these organisms is that the organisms are unicellular. They have a cell wall, and the cell wall is peculiar in the sense that they have, you know, 2 overlapping shells, and they just fit into each other like a soap box. Okay, so the lower one is called hypotheca and the upper one is called as your epitheca. So this is the characteristic feature. The cell wall is deposited by silica and it is indestructible. That means when the organism dies, after that this that is the silica deposits which are found in the outer cell wall of the organisms, they get, you know, sedimented under the bottom of the ocean or the sea. Mostly these organisms are marine or freshwater. So when they get deposited year after year, then they form diatomaceous earth. And this diatomaceous earth is highly porous and it is gritty in nature. As a result, they have high filtration quality, for which they can be used for filtering up of oil or syrups. They are used in paints, they are used in varnishes, they are excellent soundproof materials, they are fireproof even because of the gritty nature, and they are sometimes used in our toothpaste also. So that is the characteristic features of the organisms belonging to chrysophytes, that is golden algae or desmids as they are called as. And these organisms do not have any locomotory organs, but they are passively floating on the water. Now how do they passively float in the water is because of the presence of lipids in them, which make them, you know, lighter in weight, and as a result they can easily float in the surface of the water. So this is how these organisms are, which are they are photosynthetically active, and as a result they form the major amount of photosynthesis done in the ocean by the organisms which belongs to the chrysophytes. Next is your dinoflagellates or dinoflagellates. See, this is known as your di means 2. Okay, so and flagellates, it indicates that it has a flagella. So that means the organisms, these organisms belonging to dinoflagellates, they have 2 flagella. One is at the end of the organism and the other one is present in the transverse groove of the organism. So there are 2 different locations of the flagella, and because of which we can find these organisms, we can identify these organisms from that of the others. Okay, and I forgot to tell you, this golden algae or desmids, these are also known as diatoms, as they form the diatomaceous earth. The reason the diatom, why they are called as diatom, is because of the 2 overlapping shells of their cell wall. So that's why also they are named as your diatoms. So dinoflagellates, because they have 2 different flagella in 2 different locations. One is at the one end of the organism and another one is the transverse groove of the organisms. These organisms have chlorophyll A, and along with that they have fucoxanthin, and these organisms are sometimes, when they get accumulated in certain places, they make the water of the ocean or the water of the sea to be somewhat reddish brown in color. So that's why they are called as your red tides. So the organisms which forms this kind of red tides, they are known as your red dinoflagellates, or they are known as your goniolics. Now that is the organisms belonging to this category of the dinoflagellates. Now some of these organisms have the property of bioluminescence. That means they can glow in darkness. Some of the organisms are highly poisonous. They can kill the fish who feeds upon them. So there are certain organisms in the marine ecosystem called mussels. When they feed upon these organisms, they don't get killed, but when these mussels are used as delicacies by human beings and they feed upon that, then that may lead to be having a deleterious effect on the health of the human beings who consume it, and that can even lead to paralysis, and sometimes can be so fatal that it can lead to the death of the organism. So such is the characteristic of the organisms belonging to that of your dinoflagellates. And then next is your euglenoids. Now euglenoids is a peculiar kind of organisms belonging to the kingdom Protista. The reason is because this organism does not have a cell wall. It has both chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B pigment like that of the higher plants, and as a result they can do photosynthetic mode of nutrition. But whenever there is an unfavorable situation, sunlight is not available, in that case these organisms can behave heterotropically also and become predators and feed upon the organisms, the microscopic fine organisms found in the natural habitats where they are growing, that is in the water, fresh water or the sea water, and they feed upon them. These organisms are surrounded by a capsule like structure which is called as your pellicle. Rather, they don't have a cell wall around them. Now euglenoids, they have a locomotory organ. The locomotory organ is called as your flagella. They have two flagella, one is smaller and one is bigger. With the help of this locomotory organ, they can easily move around in the water bodies. The place where the locomotory organ or the flagella is inserted, that is the basal body is inserted into the body of the euglena, there is present a spot, a red spot. Okay, now this red spot is a peculiar characteristic which is the characteristic features of the organisms belonging to the euglenoids. Next is the slime molds. Now in case of slime molds, as the name suggests, that they are showing some characteristic of fungus. That means they are mostly saprophytic in the mode of nutrition, but some of them are parasitic also. They prefer to grow in the damp and the shady places, and where there is a lot of moisture, and they prefer to grow upon the dead substances like the dry leaves or the dead leaves or the twigs or some big logs of wood, and they can easily survive over there. Okay, so and they have two phases in their life cycle, that is the vegetative phase and that of the reproductive phase. The vegetative phase is characterized by a stage which is called as your plasmodium. Now what happens is that here the rounding off of the cytoplasm and the nuclei takes place into some spore-like structures surrounded by a common membrane. Now this one is called as your plasmodium. During that phase, it can show amoeboid movement. So it shows an amoeboid movement, that is an animal-like behavior. And during the time of the sexual stage, what happens is that it is showing behavior that is a plasmodium when it gets liberated and it is released into, and then fusion of two isogametes takes place, resulting into formation of the zygote. Then that phase, that's time, it is showing it is having a outer covering which is somewhat we call it as a cell wall, and its composition is same like that of your plant's cell wall, that is it is made up of cellulose. So there it is showing the characteristic which is similar to that of the plants. So that is how the anomaly is about this organisms belonging to slime molds. Okay, so showing a vegetative phase which is like that of animal like, and the sexual phase which is like that of plant like. Next is the group which is called as your protozoans. Now this protozoans is the final group which has been discussed in your book regarding the kingdom Protista. Now it has also a variety of organisms associated with it, and most of the organisms belonging to protozoans are parasitic. They can cause disease also, disease of human beings, disease of the various kinds of domestic animals, but here we are talking about the diseases of the animals. Now they can be like sporozoans, that means which are producing spore-like structures. Now they are not having any locomotory organs, and these sporozoans can cause various kinds of diseases in human beings, like you might have heard about the organism called plasmodium. In the plasmodium there is a stage called sporozoid stage. Now this sporozoid stage is the infective stage which, when enters into the human body, results into the disease called malaria. Now these organisms which are belonging to the protozoa which causes malaria, this plasmodium, not only that, the sporozoans, they sometimes show the alternation of generation. Okay, so they sometimes need two hosts to complete their life cycle. So this type of anomalies, or this type of you can say characteristics, are seen in case of the organisms belonging to the protozoa. Some of the protozoans are called amoeboids. Why are they called so? Because of the amoeboid movement. Some of the amoeba or some of the amoeboids are parasitic, you might have heard about an organism called Amoeba histolytica. Now this Amoeba histolytica is an organism which belongs to the amoeba group, belonging to the protozoa, which can cause a disease which is called as your amoebic dysentery in case of human beings. The next category of the protozoan includes the ciliated protozoans. Now what are the ciliated protozoans? Ciliated protozoan means here the unicellular organism's entire body is surrounded by fine hair-like structures which is called cilia. Okay, and that is a locomotory organ of these organisms, and they all togetherly row the cilia to move forward. So that is how they move in the water body with the help of this locomotory organ called the cilia. Now these organisms which are the ciliated protozoans, example is that of your paramecium. Now paramecium shows two nuclei in their cytoplasm. Now what is this two nuclei? One is larger than that of the other. So the larger one is called the macronucleus and the smaller one is called the micronucleus. So that is also, you can say, a peculiarity of the organisms belonging to the ciliated protozoans, that is your paramecium. And of course the contractile vacuoles are present in these organisms. Next category of protozoan is your flagellated protozoan. Now flagellated protozoan, their locomotory organ, as it suggests that it is flagella, and they are parasitic, they are free living also, and these organisms sometimes can cause serious diseases in case of human beings, like sleeping sickness. Like there is a that is your organism belonging to that of your flagellated protozoan, which is known as your trypanosoma. Trypanosoma causes sleeping sickness in case of human beings. So such is the variety of organisms found in this group of protozoans. So here we can find that the 5 groups which has been discussed in the kingdom Protista, they show a variety of organisms with a variety, diverse form of their cell structure, diverse forms of their characteristic features of their locomotory organ, about their mode of nutrition. So that's why you can say this, and also it has been studied that it shows various line of evolution. That means the later organisms which have evolved, that have evolved from the various groups of the organisms belonging to the kingdom Protista. So in that term, kingdom Protista is very important in terms of evolutionary studies if you consider. So today that was the thing which we had studied about the organisms belonging to the kingdom Protista with the 5 groups and the generalized characteristic features of the kingdom Protista and how they are different from that of kingdom Monera. Next we will take upon kingdom Fungi. That's all. Thank you.